I dragged a man off the street to my house, and what happened next shocked everyone. You heard that right? I literally grabbed this guy by the arm and pulled him down the sidewalk toward my home while everyone watched. But wait, don't go anywhere yet, because the reason why I did this and what happened when his friends started laughing at him will blow your mind. This story gets crazier by the minute, and trust me, you need to hear how this all ended. But before I tell you everything, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends so I can bring you more incredible real-life stories like this one. Now, let me take you back to where this all began, because this situation had been building up for almost 2 years. I had been living in this neighborhood for about 2 years when this whole thing happened. From the very first day I moved to this street, there was this man who would always hang out in front of this bar that was right on my block. Every single time I walked past him, without fail, he would make these inappropriate comments toward me. He would call me princess, beautiful, gorgeous, and constantly suggest that I should come to his house. Day after day, week after week, month after month, this same routine would happen. Now, I want you to understand something. For the longest time, I just ignored him completely. I never responded, never looked at him, never acknowledged his existence. I would just walk past and pretend like he wasn't there. But you know how it is, right? There are some days when you're already stressed out, when your head is heavy with problems, and when someone bothers you during those moments, it just hits different. The irritation builds up inside you, like a pressure cooker ready to explode. One particular day, after he had made his usual inappropriate comments as I walked by, I just rolled my eyes and went straight home. I was so fed up with this daily harassment that I decided to talk to my neighbor about it. I explained the whole situation to her, how this man had been bothering me consistently for almost 2 years, making these crude remarks every time I passed by. But here's where things get interesting, and this is the part that changed everything. My neighbor looked at me with this knowing expression and said something that completely caught me off guard. She told me that this man bothered every single woman who walked past that bar. Every girl, every woman. Didn't matter who they were, he would make the same inappropriate comments to all of them. But then she said something that made my jaw drop. She told me that according to the neighborhood gossip, all of this behavior was just an act, a complete facade. She explained that there were rumors going around that this man was actually gay, but he was too ashamed to admit it. He was married to a woman, had children with her, but supposedly their entire marriage was just a cover-up. The word on the street was that he used his wife to hide his true sexual orientation because he was too proud and too concerned about his masculine image to come out of the closet. When I heard this, I was absolutely stunned. Could this be true? Was this man who had been harassing women for years actually just putting on this whole macho act to hide who he really was? My neighbor emphasized that these were just rumors, that nobody could know for sure. But multiple people in the neighborhood had been saying the same thing for quite some time. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what she had told me. The more I thought about it, the more curious I became. If this was really true, what would happen if someone actually called his bluff? The very next day, as fate would have it, I had to walk past that same bar again. And sure enough, there he was, sitting in his usual spot. As I approached, I could feel that familiar tension building up inside me, knowing exactly what was about to happen. Just like clockwork, as I walked in front of the bar, he made his usual comment, telling me I should come to his house. But this time, instead of ignoring him like I had done hundreds of times before, something completely different came over me. I stopped dead in my tracks, turned around to face him directly, and said something that I never thought would come out of my mouth. I told him that if he really wanted me to come to his house so badly, then let's go right now. I challenged him to actually follow through on all these things he had been saying to me for the past 2 years. You should have seen the look on his face. His eyes went wide, and I could tell he was completely caught off guard. He clearly wasn't expecting me to respond at all, let alone to actually accept his proposition. The confidence he had been displaying for years suddenly vanished in an instant. I kept going, telling him that every single day when I walked past, he would comment on how attractive I was, how much he wanted me, how I should come to his house, how he wanted me in his bed. So I told him, "Fine, let's go to my house right now, and you can do everything you've been talking about." But here's where it gets really good. He immediately started backtracking, stammering that he was just joking around, that it wasn't serious, that I didn't need to take it that way. But I wasn't having any of it. I had reached my breaking point, and I was determined to expose this man for what he really was. Without hesitation, I grabbed him by the arm and started pulling him down the sidewalk, away from the bar. I was literally dragging this man along the sidewalk while announcing loudly that he was coming to my house to do everything he had been promising for the past 2 years. Now, I need to paint you a picture here. This man was shorter than me and quite skinny. Plus, he had been drinking, so he was a bit unsteady on his feet. That's the only reason I was able to physically drag him like I did. He was trying to resist, trying to pull back, but I had momentum and determination on my side. As I'm pulling him down the sidewalk, he's protesting, saying that he was just playing around, that he's married, that he has a wife. But I kept insisting that he was going to follow through on his words for once in his life. But here's the part that made the whole situation even more incredible. The other men who were hanging around the bar started watching this whole scene unfold, and instead of helping their friend, they began laughing and encouraging the situation. They were shouting at him, asking why he would refuse when a woman was actually inviting him to her house. They were basically calling him out for being all talk and no action. The peer pressure from his friends was intense. They kept saying things like, "Come on, man, the girl is asking you to go to her house. Why would you turn that down?" And, "You talk about this stuff all the time, now's your chance to prove it." This social pressure was making him even more uncomfortable and desperate to get out of the situation. He was trying even harder to break free from my grip, while his friends continued to mock him for his reluctance. Finally, he managed to pull away from me and practically shouted that it was all just a joke, that he was married and would never cheat on his wife, that he was a faithful husband. He sat back down in his chair with this whole speech about being a loyal, honorable man. I just turned around and walked away, leaving him there with his friends who were now laughing even harder at the entire situation. When I got home, I couldn't stop laughing. The whole thing was so absurd and unexpected. I kept thinking about how I had no idea where that burst of boldness had come from. I also realized how risky what I had done actually was. What if he had actually taken me up on the offer? What if he had tried to do something harmful? I was incredibly lucky that he turned out to be all talk and no action. But the story doesn't end there. The aftermath was even more interesting than the incident itself. After that day, word spread quickly throughout the neighborhood about what had happened. The men who had witnessed the whole thing started teasing him mercilessly about how he had backed down when a woman actually challenged him. They were calling him weak, saying he had been shown up by a female, and his reputation as this tough macho guy was completely shattered. But even more significantly, the rumors about his sexual orientation intensified dramatically. People started talking even more openly about their suspicions that he was gay. New stories began circulating almost daily. Someone would claim they saw him with another man, or that he had been giving money to young guys in the neighborhood, or various other gossip that I won't repeat here. Whether any of these rumors were true or not, I have no way of knowing. But what I do know is that his behavior toward me changed completely and permanently. From that day forward, every time I walk past that bar, he doesn't say a single word to me. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't make comments. He literally turns his head the other way and pretends I don't exist. The daily harassment that had been going on for 2 years stopped immediately and never resumed. To this day, he's still married to the same woman, still has his family, still hangs out at that same bar. But whenever I walk by, there's this awkward silence, this obvious avoidance, like he's afraid I might call his bluff again. Looking back on this whole experience, I have mixed feelings about what I did. On one hand, I'm glad I finally stood up to someone who had been making me uncomfortable for such a long time. The harassment stopped, and I proved that he was nothing but talk when actually challenged. But on the other hand, I recognized that what I did was incredibly reckless and potentially dangerous. I put myself in a situation that could have gone very wrong very quickly. I was fortunate that this particular man was harmless when it came down to it. But that might not always be the case in similar situations. I want to be very clear about something. I am not proud of handling the situation this way, and I absolutely do not recommend that anyone else try something like this. I got lucky that nothing bad happened to me, but things could have gone in a completely different and much more dangerous direction. The reason I'm sharing this story is not to encourage this type of behavior, but rather to share an unusual real-life experience that shows how unpredictable situations can be, and how sometimes people who appear to be one way are actually completely different underneath. Street harassment is a serious issue that many women deal with on a daily basis. There are much safer and more appropriate ways to handle these situations than what I did. Talking to local authorities, documenting the behavior, seeking support from community organizations, or simply changing your route when possible are all better options than confronting someone directly like I did. But I have to admit, there was something deeply satisfying about watching this man's tough guy facade crumble the moment he was actually challenged to back up his words with actions. For years, he had felt safe making inappropriate comments because he assumed women would just ignore him or be too intimidated to respond. The moment someone called his bluff, his true nature was revealed. The whole experience taught me something important about bullies and harassers. Often they're not nearly as confident or powerful as they pretend to be. They rely on people being too polite, too scared, or too overwhelmed to fight back. When someone does stand up to them, they often reveal themselves to be much weaker than they appeared. Of course, this doesn't mean that confrontation is always the answer or always safe. Every situation is different, and personal safety should always be the top priority. But in this particular case, with this particular person, calling his bluff worked exactly as I had hoped it would. The neighborhood dynamics changed after this incident too. Other women started sharing their own stories about this man's behavior, and it became clear that I wasn't the only one who had been dealing with his harassment. Some of them thanked me for finally doing something about it, while others were concerned about the method I had chosen. What struck me most was how quickly the social dynamics shifted. This man had built his reputation on being this bold, confident guy who could say whatever he wanted to women. But one moment of being challenged completely destroyed that image. His friends saw him for what he really was. The neighborhood gossip intensified, and his behavior changed permanently. It's been several months since this incident happened, and the situation has remained stable. He continues to avoid me completely, and I haven't experienced any further harassment from him, or retaliation of any kind. The whole thing seems to have been a one-time explosion that resolved the ongoing problem permanently. I still live in the same neighborhood. I still walk past that same bar regularly, and life has returned to normal. Except now, instead of dreading that walk and bracing myself for inappropriate comments, I can simply go about my business without harassment. This is a true story that was shared with me by one of my followers on another social media platform. They wanted to remain anonymous to protect their privacy, but they felt their experience was worth sharing because it shows how complex these situations can be and how unexpected the outcomes sometimes are. I want to thank them for trusting me with their story and for being willing to share such a personal experience. Stories like this remind us that real life is often stranger and more complicated than fiction. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with others who might find it interesting. Also, drop a comment below and let me know what you think about this situation. Have you ever been in a similar position? How do you think you would have handled it? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video with another incredible real-life story.